welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Punch Trunk, and with me today to get trunk with me are my good friends Essie McPeter and Matt Hunter. Say hi, guys.
Anthony.
All right, that's an interesting elephant sound there, Matt. I'm not sure if that comes through or not, but anyway. Oh, dear. Just to get underway, so as mentioned, this is Punch Trunk, released on the 19th of December, 1953. It's the 698th in series, and it's directed by Chuck Jones. You can find it in two ways on physical media. The first way is unrestored on the Looney Tunes Golden Collection Volume 6. It was one of those bonus cartoons that wasn't restored in time, as I understand it. But in a much better option, it's on the recently released Looney Tunes Collector's Choice Volumes 3 Blu-ray set. It looks stunning. They even fixed up an error, I believe, as well from the streaming version. So, yeah, definitely get it. I'll have a link below to that set. Essie, you might be more familiar. What was the error that they fixed on this one? Do you know?
Okay, so in the beginning of the cartoon, when they brought this to streaming, they added a fade after the whole pan, which I'm assuming was to remove maybe some botched Photoshop title with a very obvious fade over the pan. But when they brought it to disc, they fixed that, thankfully. So it looks really good. It looks like they may have even done it in-house. It really looks that good.
Yeah, because it's a great restoration, and whether you like this short or not, you can definitely agree this one's an absolute stunner. But in case you haven't seen this one, and I can't share the full cartoon here on YouTube as always, because it is under copyright. But what happens here is very straightforward. You have a tiny elephant from the SS Michael Maltese. He wanders around town, I'm assuming it's a he, we'll just go with it, and causes an uproar amongst the population. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, well, I think it is a he because at one point, Robert C. Bruce, who's the narrator, says a full-grown bull elephant. And a bull elephant would be a male elephant.
So there we are. It's all educational, this channel. We learn all about elephants along with cartoons and chicken breeds and all that stuff in other reviews. A few bits of trivia on this one. So the title, that's a play on the term punch drunk. And of course, trunk is an elephant's trunk. And for some weird reason, you guys call the rear of the car trunks. We call them boots, which is even weirder. But anyway, you guys say trunk, we say boot. But no, they mean elephant trunk here, of course. But yeah, punch trunk is just a term for being...
Trunk was also an old term for like a big suitcase.
Yeah, definitely. So many meanings, but the obvious one here is, of course, elephant trunk. Now, there's quite a few references to various Looney Tunes staff members here, both directly and indirectly. One of the indirect ones is the whole Marsha and John bit that you see during this, where you see two characters that call each other Marsha and John.
Marsha.
There was a Stan Freberg song called John and Marsha, and Stan Freberg, of course, did many voices in Looney Tunes up until this point, though he's not in this one, so there's that. But Matt, you tell me that they also reference the whole John and Marsha thing in other shorts, don't they?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty common. John, Marsha. You'll see that in a lot of 50s cartoons, Warner Brothers cartoons. Because of Stan Freberg, he was a friend of many of the people that worked on these cartoons, and he did a lot of voices. He was a comedian who did a lot of records with Capitol. He was a comedy record guy. He started in the late 40s with Warner Brothers.
He took over some of those dumb voices and the impressions that they would have gotten Kent Rogers to do before he passed away. So.
Right. He was kind of a replacement for Kent Rogers. And one of the Goofy Gophers.
Yeah, he was brought into that Clamp It Started and Others Completed, Birth of a Notion, and Goofy Gophers, as you said.
Why did you hit me in the head, Leopold? Don't you know that might make me very angry? Now, I will do terrible, horrible things to you.
In terms of the other voices, we of course got Mel Blanc doing various voices in this one, and we've also got Marion Richmond. She does all the women's voices in here, and Robert D. Bruce, quite clear he does the narrator voice, but he also does the voice of Mr. Pratt and the newsman as well in that latest scene towards the end, and is even referenced as Robert Bruce Cameron instead of Robert Cameron Bruce, which is his actual name. So they do that. Plus, we also see, as I already mentioned, the SS Michael Maltese. Michael Maltese is the writer of this short. And you got Mr. Pratt, the moderator, is named after layout artist for Fritz Freeling. And Foster Television, I guess Warren Foster really hit it big. You know, he was a writer, and now he's a television brand maker. But anyway, I'm still waiting for him to invent the smell-o-vision. I'm still waiting for that to happen.
And but Carl Stalling doesn't think it's going to work.
So the other bit I wanted to mention, and this will sort of start off the review proper, is I first saw this one, and I'm sure many people did, on Quackbusters. And there are a few scenes that were cut out, and of course it starts a little bit further into the cartoon, but I remember seeing this one and thinking, it's unusual. Like, it's quite clear it's the Chuck Jones short. And yeah, I always liked this one as a kid. It was never, I guess, ha-ha funny when I watched it then, but when rewatching it now, I think it's a lot funnier. Matt, you're telling me that this cartoon actually holds a special place for you as well, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, because I first saw it as part of Quackbusters, and other than recording it off of TV, the only way you could really see it for a long time was the DVD release of Daffy Duck's Quackbusters. And I had a good friend of mine, probably 10, 15 years ago, who's sadly no longer with us, but used to borrow the DVD that I had of Quackbusters all the time, and she even watched it with me as well. And it was her favorite cartoon. It was her favorite, and she just absolutely loved it. She thought the elephant was cute, and she used to have this bit where, kind of an inside joke, where we'd be sitting around somewhere and she'd break wind and she'd say, "Oh, that was the little elephant. That's what made that noise." She unfortunately got really into drugs and ended up dying from it, and it was really upsetting. But I look back on it, and anybody, I don't care who it is, anybody in any walk of life can find a Looney Tunes cartoon if they grew up with them, or even if they didn't, if they've just seen a bunch of them, they like it, that they identify with and they love. This one is not exactly a standout. It doesn't make the lists of greatest Looney Tunes ever. It doesn't make the list of greatest Chuck Jones cartoons ever or anything like that, but it has enough. It's weird, it's quirky. So no matter how obscure a cartoon is, there's always going to be somebody who identifies with it and loves it. And that's the beauty of this library of 1,000 plus cartoons, is that even if it's not part of the list of greatest or what the historians love or what the critics love or anything like that, there's something there for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This one's a nice little quirky, different one that's, it's nice to see these every once in a while, I think.
Yeah. In terms of like the obscure one I like, I mean, I really like the Foxy Duckling myself, but anyhow, I do definitely agree that this isn't one of Jones's best, and I have a little theory that this was an idea Maltese himself really wanted to do, and while Chuck did put his touches in it, especially the design, he kind of auto-piloted the story because it plays out a lot like a Spot Gag cartoon, but if you change the order of the gag, it would be a lot more suspenseful, I think.
That would be interesting to see if someone maybe re-edits the order of these gags and see if it flows in a different way.
Yeah, I'll explain in a little later just what I mean, but let's get into that.
Exactly. So one thing I wanted to point out is around this time, the studio had to be shut down to be retooled for 3D film because that was going to be seen as the future, right? So they already released one 3D short.
Lumberjack
Correct.
Rabbit.
Yeah. And that one, if you watch it, apparently it's decent in 3D, but there's only 2 shots in there which feel like it was designed specifically for 3D. And that's, of course, the shield in the beginning and the whole Bugs Bunny in, that whole box effect that you see. But there's no other shots in that short that feel like it's overly 3D.
I think Bullet Shot might have been a bit more 3D.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
But
Bugs being shot out of the gun.
Yeah.
could be. But this one, I am convinced that they intended this one for 3D, at least at first. Maybe they changed it later, I don't know. Because if you look at the opening shot, you got these 2 layers. So you got the one layer in the front with all the bananas going by, and then you got the back layer with all the boxes. And that's very unusual. You wouldn't do that unless you wanted to indicate some sort of depth. And in 3D, that would look interesting because you'd have the bananas in the very front and the other stuff way in the back to indicate depth. And Essie, you mentioned there's one scene that could be in 3D too, that'll work pretty well. And that's the shot with the girl and her mother.
Yeah, I think it makes sense because she's all the way in the front and she's all the way back. I initially thought until you mentioned it that it was June Foray, but I'm kind of surprised that it isn't because it does sound like her quite a bit. But yeah, that would have worked in 3D, and they could have staged the whole house gag. And I also think the bird bath scene could have worked in 3D if they placed the bird behind the elephant and then the water would have come towards the audience. They could have done that gag in 3D. I know that Claws for Alarm was actually planned in 3D, and if you look at every other shot in that cartoon, like half of them, you can tell they were designed for 3D. I wish it was finished that way along with yours. I guess they were going to let Jones do 3D cartoons and maybe Frieden or McKimson because they would have actually, I mean, Jones was definitely the most ambitious director of the period, and they knew it. So giving him the 3D cartoons was a very conscious decision. So Claws for Alarm and this one, and maybe a few others, would have definitely worked in 3D. And I wish they would have done it because maybe it would have given Warner some incentive to put out the cartoons they own in 3D, like Lumberjack Rabbit and Popeye and the Ace of Space. I would like to see those in 3D just to know.
But I don't know if you guys noticed, and I think it's probably more apparent in this restoration, but when we first see the elephant, but the first few shots is just this really weird, simplistic silhouette. Like, did you guys know that?
Maurice Noble is all over this cartoon, and that is obviously a Maurice Noble take. And then you look at that scene that we all were talking about, the mother and the daughter in the house, where in the foreground, you've got the mother and she's sitting there reading a book, smoking a cigarette, and you've got the daughter going back and forth with a piece of cake. And you look at just the design of the house, first of all. I mean, look at that window in the background, looking out at the night sky, and you see the stylized plant, and you see the pans across that. I mean, not only does that look like it's designed for 3D, but then you look at just Maurice Noble's just stylized designs for that. And when they get to the kid's room, you look at that room and it's like she has been drawing on the wall. She's been drawing crayon drawings on the wall, and they look like children's drawings. And one of them includes an elephant, and it's very UPA, but yet not.
This whole thing is sort of just trying to rub off UPA, not just the whole design, of course, but the whole idea of this like suburban disruption, the whole paranoia aspect. It really plays into how adults were feeling in this period. It's really trying to ape UPA in a way that they would, of course, perfect in One Froggy Evening and do a funnier cartoon, including this one, than most of UPA's cartoons.
Yeah, Warner Brothers made funnier UPA cartoons than UPA made. I think even Disney made funnier UPA cartoons.
Most studios did better cartoons than UPA. UPA just created a template for everyone else to do better.
And I don't know necessarily better. It was obviously a cost-cutting measure as well, to be as simplistic as possible. But I think maybe Warner Brothers and Disney in particular did it better than UPA did.
But getting back to this one, I like the initial gag. It's okay. It's what I like to call like a setup type gag where the sailor's looking on and is like, oh, is that an elephant? And then you got this beautiful bit of animation where you just got the eyes animated at first and then the sudden drop. I thought that was great. Just the look of disbelief. But, you know, as a setup, it's fine. It works. So we get to the first gag, if you will, of this spot gag type short where the elephant's in the bird bath and the man's calling the authorities. You know, he's just puffing away his cigarette. Wonderful animation, that scene, just the whole tense moments like, oh my God, there's an elephant in my bird bath, you know, I need help and all that. And there's even the added touch where he doesn't even put his phone back on the hook. He just drops it as well, like that nice little acting touch.
Hello? Hello, police department? I want to report an elephant in my bird bath. 112 North Highland. Yeah, that's right. Please, hurry.
But this gag is really, really funny because it's got this interesting punchline where, okay, there's a knock on the door, the man is overjoyed, he goes up, and they, in a great bit of flurry animation, the orderlies put him in a straitjacket and take him away.
He's playing into it. I keep a giraffe in mind.
Steady now, lad. Easy does it.
But I did see an elephant in my bird bath.
Sure, I know. I keep a giraffe in mine.
Yes, that delivery kills me every single time, sure. And I keep a giraffe in mine. Just that whole thing. And presumably in a darker twist, they're going to take him away to the asylum where he'll probably get some shock treatments and other quackery done to him. You know, poor guy. Makes it even worse when you think about it. But anyway. But we're not going to get into 1950s quackery treatments here on this channel, of course. Unless you guys want me to. Let me know in the comments
I always
below.
love, again, just a little touch of the elephant spraying the bird. I always love that little touch of. Because I like how the other animals in the cartoon interact with the elephant. Like in the circus sequence later that wasn't in Quackbusters.
Just that whole sped up voice that you hear the bird just telling off this elephant. Now it's just got that look of, I don't care. That whole smug look. It's fantastic. Fantastic. So the elephant goes to the housewife, I don't know, probably a different backyard or whatever, and he tries to be helpful. But there's not really much to this gag, I feel. It's more funny because of the reaction shot by the woman and, you know, she hides the washing machine and that's it. But it's okay. I don't mind that.
I mean, these are rarely seen, you know, Chuck Jones didn't do a whole lot of human designs in cartoons, but you get that here, and the expressions are just perfect in all of them. Oh.
I wrote down gag by gag what happens. It plays like a spot gag cartoon, I think, as we were saying earlier. But the thing is that they don't really build a suspense. I did notice that there's a bit of a day and night cycle, because it looks like that they did that whole night sequence and then they had the drunk guy. But it's just weird to me because these gags could have built suspense if you put maybe this gag first and then you did the gag of him being locked up and then you did the gag of the whole therapist later. That would have built suspense because it's all denial. And then you did all the scene where people actually are believing in this elephant. That would have been interesting. It would have built suspense to the
Yeah.
ending.
Yeah. But my question is, why would they need to do that? The idea was just do a bunch of spot gags and be weird. And I think there's room for something to just be a spot gag cartoon with stuff that's weird.
It's a UPA spot gag
don't-
cartoon done better than McKimson tried.
Yeah. And we see a gag which I can kind of relate to, the optometrist gag, which I thought was really, really funny. And you've got yet another unfortunate person
Yeah, I love that.
who gets punched out. It's like, well, what did I do? I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, that's another good cost-cutting gag because you don't see him punch him, but it's still a very funny gag because you at least see him with the black eye. It's all for the fact
then
that
you
he
see the-
acknowledges
oh.
that there's an elephant, but he doesn't even care that there's an elephant in the first place.
And the whole Carl Starling thing, you
Mhm.
know, the whole like the angry footstep music he does. It's just an added touch there, but I definitely like that one. And
I was just going to say that you don't see the guy get punched. You hear it, and then you see the aftermath. And I think with a lot of cartoons, especially cartoons made now, people don't take advantage of that subtlety
Yeah.
about how something that can happen off screen, if you just have a sound effect and then you see the result, it's just as
Yeah.
funny as if you see it on
Yeah,
screen.
and again, there's a bit of silence
Um,
before the punch, which builds into it. And I'm also thinking Porky Pig's Feet, where
Yeah.
they do the same thing.
Speaking of Hanna-Barbera, you know, with those early cartoons, like especially the early Flintstones episodes, you know, Fred Flintstone got beat up a
Yeah.
lot, but you never saw it. It was off screen, and all they did was vibrate the screen. You have the sound effect, and then you have the screen vibrate, so you felt the impact. And then you saw the aftermath of Fred being beat up, but you never actually saw anybody throw a punch or hit him with a club.
car crash
know?
as well. Yeah, you hear it
Right.
off screen, or them getting out of the car, you just hear the door slam and that kind of thing. Yeah, all kinds of shortcuts, which
Yeah.
still works. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Next up is that gag which we referred to already, in that we suspected was designed for 3D, and that's, of course, the apartment. I love the initial pan, how we're panning up that beautiful building. Just absolutely
Establishing that they're a bit of high class as well.
exactly right. And, you know, I like the whole dismissive nature of the mummy, and this tells you that nothing's changed over the years, because back then it was the dismissive too much television,
Oh, too much television.
which then evolved into too much rap music, too much video games, and now
Too
it's
much
too much screen time.
Too much TikTok. Yeah.
Yeah, because back then, just to put this into context for people as well, in case they don't get it, television really was only starting to become more affordable for people. So people were starting to buy the television sets, and of course, children's programs were popping up and everything. And of course, what did the children do after school? Instead of doing their homework, just go straight to the television set and watch the cartoons.
And before that, too much radio, and before that, too much comic books, too much detective stories. I've seen this really early 1910s cartoon where the character of Bobby Bumps is caught reading detective stories and his father and mother are dismissive of him doing it, yet they both read them. It's interesting to see that this was always a thing.
Yep. Always a thing, and nowadays there's too much screen time. So what will the next thing be? Too much AI? I don't know, but we will see. So we got that whole scene, the whole John, Marsha. I love that delivery there
Yeah.
that we
I
reached
think
upon.
John is supposed to be a caricature of Chuck Jones because Chuck was a bit plumper these days, and you can see that in the caricature of him that they used a few times in Warner Club News.
Apparently, the Little John caricature of him in Rabbit Hood was supposed to be Chuck Jones, but apparently he got a little chunky at
Yeah.
one point, and they used it as fodder for comedy, and I don't think he minded it.
I guess it prompted him to lose weight, I suppose. And maybe that's why he didn't take
I
any
guess.
photos around that time.
So the next gag is in the pool hall, where the gag, of course, is that the drunk man sees the elephant, but says, they used to be pink. which is a reference to pink elephants, you know, the whole, when you're so drunk, you see pink elephants. And there was even the scene in Dumbo, which
That
references.
great scene.
Oh, it's a beautiful scene.
Yeah.
One of my favorite Disney sequences of all time. And I'm sure a lot of people agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
As I said in
Classic.
another review, I think it's the best Disney movie because it has perfect pacing. There's nothing to be left out. And again, it has that great sequence by Hicks Loki, who was a classic New York animator. And it is the most sort of like East Coast thing you'll ever see in a Disney feature. But I guess they were applying a bit to that here because they would take little things from Disney features, I suppose, and place them in here because they were always looking to Disney a little bit, especially for Rip for comedy. But again, I always just love the "you're late." Like, again, the pink elephant has to show up at a specific point.
And Freeling did an entire cartoon called Calling Dr. Porky, where Porky Pig is a doctor and he treats this kind of fat, drunk dog.
Yeah, who has pink elephant.
Keeps seeing Pink Elephant. And of course, it was originally made in black and white. So he just says, you know, they're pink, and so you're supposed to go with it. And I remember seeing a computer colorized version of it, and they actually were pink. And I'm like, that's the only advantage that any colorized cartoon ever did. Okay, the elephants are pink, and now the gag makes sense. Very rare,
It's weird that they would do a pink elephant
incidents.
cartoon in black and white in the first place.
Right. Like, if the whole thing is the elephants are pink, why didn't they make it a color melody
they
or
could.
something?
Yeah.
But looking at the drunk scene, look at the backgrounds, and the whole thing is askew. Like, the buildings are askew, the street light, the hydrant, and there's even a sign that says "no, no." The whole thing's just crazy looking.
As though a drunk might envision.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a designer's
you know,
paradise. They get a
everything-
reason to be abstract.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this restoration just showcases it beautifully, I think.
I think it's another
So,
shot that would have worked well in 3D, going back on your theory.
I
Not
totally agree.
subtle way, but it would have worked.
Exactly.
You're late. He always used to be pink.
Now we're at the circus, and this is the scene that was not shown in Quackbusters. I first saw this one when I first saw the short in full, as intended, unrestored on the Golden Collection, Volume 6. And look, it's interesting now we're going to see the animals react further. You know, we've had the pissed off bird before, but now we're going to see an elephant being shocked with that wonderful jaw drop. Like, the elephant just didn't realize it was holding onto a small elephant, but anyway, you just go with it.
I like the cat mistaking it for a mouse. Like, I mean, a kangaroo looks more like a mouse than an elephant, but I guess when the elephant is shrunk down, it does look like a mouse offhand.
Well, he's chasing an actual mouse. And then when he reaches under the tent to grab the mouse, he actually grabs the elephant. And then he realizes that the elephant is in his mouth. He goes crazy and acts like a monkey.
It's hilarious. But I'm sure you both can agree that but just before the elephant roared, the look of the cat face of satisfaction, it's just so cute. I don't know. I looked at it, I'm going, one of the cutest cat structures ever done. I don't know. That's just a little side thing there.
He usually drew neurotic cats, so like Quad.
Exactly. And this one looked more
Yeah.
like what Free Freely would do in a few years in some of the shorts. But anyway, that's a...
And of course, there's that great reaction to the elephant.
Very much cat behavior. I have two of them.
I've got a few as well, and
I love cats. I have some.
There we are. But without Manny here, you know, there's no dogs in this review. Hi, Manny, if you're watching. So the next scene is the psychiatrist going crazy, and I have to admit with your whole thing about reordering it, I think this scene would probably work better earlier.
Yeah,
if
it's out of place.
if we were doing it in a themed way, but whatever, it's still a pretty funny one. You know what's going to happen, that the psychiatrist is going to swap the patient for himself.
You listen to that dialogue, though, of the woman and the man. She's talking, like, he has the guts to do this as she talking about getting beat as a child by, I think, her teacher.
The trauma she's obviously gone through. Another win for the patriarchy, I guess.
I think it all started with father refused to take me to the circus. Just a simple damn.
I wonder if that might have been an influence on Paul Dini and Bruce Timm later on in the Batman animated series in the 90s. Mad Love. Yeah. Remember when the Joker tells the story to Harley Quinn, which is apparently a lie, but
I remember when my father used to take me to the circus.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I'm not familiar with that show. I need to watch it
Yeah.
actually, but I'm sure that's where they got that from.
And then he broke my nose.
Mad
Make it
Love, masterpiece on just so many levels.
Mother used to scold me when I was only 3. She'd say, Dolores, you're not seeing little lavender men in the sugar bowl. But I did, Doctor. And then when I went to nursery school, my teacher, Mrs. Swanson, she was a synthetic blonde. Well, Mrs. Swanson used to spank me hard, even when...
I think it all began when Father refused to take me to the circus. I was a fragile child.
So then we're at the point where, okay, things were kind of slow, but things do kind of ramp up in the last 2 minutes where, okay, more people now see this pachyderm, see this elephant. So they're watching this guy paint a flagpole. I don't know why that's so fascinating, but anyway, are they hoping he'll fall? I don't know. But they're watching him, and of course the payoff is that they all climb up to the flagpole with him. Once we see that, we see the news where it's like, oh my goodness, there's this elephant that's around, I've seen it. And all those clippings come from the Warner Club News, where they just use that just to fill in the spaces, so to speak.
Freeze frame that stuff, because it's random, but anytime you see a newspaper clipping in a Warner Brothers cartoon, freeze frame it, especially in the restored versions, because you can actually read them now, and they're cut and pasted from various sources.
It almost gives you an idea of when these cartoons were in production, because they would have probably used it from a recent article. Like, I recall one of them actually had Ham Hamilton, one of the early animators, passing, which is sad, but it's an interesting time of seeing what was on the mind. It kind of was a tribute to him, I would say.
Because also, in the first one, you see this photo of these old cars, and I'm wondering, was that promoting a movie? Was it just the arrival of certain executives? I don't know. But if you guys know where that one's come from, definitely let me know in the comments, because I'm really curious about that photo of all those old cars. But my favorite title in this one is, and this showcases the writing abilities of Michael Maltese, the Picayune, is it Picayune? Picayune, whatever, pachyderm panics populace.
Pachyderm panics population.
Yeah, I definitely felt like Porky when I was trying to pronounce that first word for sure. But if you look below it though, Circus Cat goes insane. Beautiful. Oh man, and we get to the last gag that the noted scientist is now going to calm the population down, that this thing doesn't exist, and we get this nice calm. Yep, we get this nice calm explanation that it's not possible for there to be a small elephant and blah blah blah. Goes through everything, but then the actual interviewer is there, newscaster is there, he sees the small elephant, is like, ladies and gentlemen, the opinions of the speaker does not represent this network, and that's it. It just ends there. And I think that's a small problem. I don't know how else they could have really ended this short, but I don't know. It doesn't feel like
there was nowhere to take it. I guess with it feeling like a spot gag cartoon, there's no recurring gag to finish off. But again, it could have been more than a spot gag cartoon, as I was saying. But yeah, there's nothing that could have ended it. So it works as is, but it just isn't a strong ending, which kind of happens with some of these cartoons. You got to just finish at some point. It wasn't one of their more ambitious efforts, of course, but it is a very pleasing one that could have been a bit more.
It's not like the early Boscos and Buddies where they literally did not know how to end anything and it was really bad. But here, there's an ending. It's kind of, I'll do my Simpsons reference because I know Manny will be watching this. It's like, it's an ending. That's enough.
How's Bosco gonna save the girl?
I don't know.
Let's go home.
Which I'll admit, I do love that ending though, because I thought that
they knew that they couldn't end those cartoons.
Yeah, so I will give them credit for that one at least. But yeah, look, the ending, not particularly strong, but it's an ending. It's fine. It's not bad. So after this short, look, it's not Jones and Maltese's finest. It's a very quirky short that's just there.
We're just a lot more abstract disruption one-offs coming forward.
Yeah, and it's fine. I'm glad that they just did different things. Whether it works or not, or whether it works entirely or not, it doesn't matter. I like that they tried different things. They had a set amount of Bugs Bunnies and Daffies and whatever they had to make, but then they went off and tried new things, and I'm glad for it. This one, look, it's one that I enjoyed as a kid through Quackbusters, so I definitely got the soft spot for it. I reckon 8.5. It's got great design. The gags are funny. It's an interesting story, but it's not a classic. So I reckon 8.5.
I'm gonna give it an 8.5 because again, it feels like a short that was just something that Mike Maltese really wanted to do, despite the fact that it kind of had more potential that wasn't utilized, but it is still very pleasing, and even if it's not a classic, it works well. It was another cartoon. It works that way, and I do like how they used it in Quackbusters.
Say 8.5 as well. I think it's a better UPA cartoon than the UPA would ever make. And I think it's funny. And I think it's a good showcase for not only Mike Maltese's writing, but also for Robert C. Bruce as a talent and also Maurice Noble. It's decent. And I think people who've seen it like it. So 8.5. Yeah.
Exactly. Not a classic, but a nice, fun, quirky short to pass the time. But that will do it for this one. And of course, 1953, this is the last one. Hooray! You know, one of the finest years in Looney Tunes history. I don't think anyone can argue with that point. Still got some classics coming up, and, you know, the budgets will pinch a little bit, yes. And of course, the whole shutdown, then reopening, things will change. You know, we've got Tasmanian Devil coming up, the True Speeding Gazelles coming up, What's Opera Dog, we've got One Frog Evening, and a whole bunch of quirky classics here and there, plus
And
the
those
usual.
great Daffy and Speedies.
Oh, yeah, the masterpieces, of course.
Of course they are, you loco dog.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to those when we get to those, that's for sure. So, yeah, that'll do it for this one in 1953. So until next time and next year, take care.
That's all, folks.
I see you.
Obvious to the ordered mind that such a thing as this tiny elephant could not possibly exist.
Ladies and gentlemen, the opinions of the speaker do not necessarily represent those of this station.